Hi, Nick. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. I was just about to drop you an email saying we were ready and standing by. Quite a few people did connect at 8, but I've been giving kind of periodic warnings saying time zone issues. So
Nice.
you're what time is it with you at the moment? 10 a.m. Is that right?
10 o'clock. Yeah, but I've been up since early, had a meeting with the communications director at Vonday this morning.
Uh-huh.
Um, they're an interesting bunch.
Grand. So we're just
They're,
waiting for people to come in. Yeah, people starting to come in now, which is good news.
cool. I think as we mentioned yesterday, I'd be pretty keen to really to have maybe even have do we have a quick almost Q&A at the beginning to get a direction that people would want to go? Because I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
and I can definitely cover some generic stuff, but I'm sure that there's specific areas that people would really like to see covered. And I think if we could get a consensus or
What
something.
I'll ask for now to put their hands up if they want to put a question in at the start or to put a question on the chat line, Nick. Um,
Yeah,
so there's 20 or so people online at the moment.
yeah, I can see. Yeah.
5 or 6 minutes to go. So, guys, you can hear what Nick's suggesting to help him steer his talk on PredictWind this evening. If you want to give him some questions to feed off, I think he's keen to speak uninterrupted. But at the end, he'll take as many questions as we want to fire at him. So if anybody puts their electronic hand up or puts a question in the chat, we can steer him in the direction we want him to talk about. Oh, somebody says they can't hear anything. I'm not quite sure why that
Take the
is.
volume up.
Can you hear me all right, Nick?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, great. Okay. So it's a problem for them, not for us, but cool. So a hand up from Phil and Norma Heaton. Phil, do you want to come and ask your question?
Yes, Nick, we use PredictWind daily when we're on the boat. And what's quite interesting is where we are having spent 10 years crossing oceans and doing a circumnavigation. We're currently in the Mediterranean. And we find that the PredictWind moderated versions of ECMWF and GFS are not giving us forecasts which are as accurate as the unmoderated versions. And yet, when we go and look at your performance data for last week, last month, they're actually showing to be pretty reasonable against the unmoderated versions. But our experience is that it's not quite so. So I'd be interested to hear what you might have to say about that.
Yeah, by all means. And I can, you know, I can answer that right now.
Well,
So, I mean,
not until we start the webinar, Nick.
okay.
So we'll save that one up, but otherwise people
I
will
might
set
just
up
need
other
a pen.
discussions.
What have I got a pen?
Thanks for that, Phil. Anybody else want to put a
I'm pretty sure I recognize Phil's name from our support desk
okay? Your support desk, by the way, is
in a
fantastic.
good way.
Use it on many occasions. If anybody else wants to put a question before Nick starts his webinar so that he can talk to it. So there's a question from Steve Bradley. I don't know if you can see that on the chat, Nick, can you? Or I'll read it out to you. We're very familiar with PredictWind use, the Pro subscription. We also find the moderated version are not as good as the core models. Interested to hear your thoughts. So echoing Phil's question there from Steve Bradley.
Cool.
So that seems to be a talking point for you. Another couple of minutes, I think. We've got good numbers coming in now, Nick. So you're going to have a good audience tonight, I think, and hopefully lots of good questions at the end.
Cool. And I think, it's good to see some, that's a great question to have asked, and I think maybe we should do questions along the way so that we actually answer presenting the things that people want to hear about.
My guess is, Nick, that most of the people dialing in tonight will be pretty experienced PredictWind users. We've been using it since 2015, I think. So they probably won't necessarily want a kind of basic primer on all things PredictWind, but will be interested in the discussion side. So you're cool.
Yep. Yeah, no, cool.
If we'll use the chat,
would we go back in time?
We'll take one more question off Brian Russell, who I'm going to allow him to open his microphone now. Brian, do you want to ask your question there?
Yeah, I've been using PredictWind for years and years, both coastal and offshore. And then recently I started using LuckGrib, and I really like the isochronal weather routing feature of LuckGrib. And I know that TZ also uses isochronal, and find it much easier to use underway for kind of the 24 to 48 hour weather routing that we do on passages. And I was wondering if PredictWind had thought about that or looked into that as a feature. So yeah, if you could just talk about weather routing in general and kind of procedures for
sure. And I can talk about algorithms and how that works and the sort of the differerences there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you very much. So it's 8 o'clock. No, 9 o'clock tonight. First of all, apologies for the confusion over time zones. We did try and advertise that this webinar was to start at 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC. Today, I think most people got the message, but there were a few people on earlier. Hopefully they've stuck around and rejoined. We have a good audience now. There are people still joining. And tonight, I'm very pleased to report that we've got Nick Olson of PredictWind, the New Zealand-based weather routing and all things nautical software these days. He's dialing in from New Zealand, hence the change in timing for tonight's talk. All future talks will be back to 8 p.m. 2000 hours GMT. So I think the numbers are fairly plateaued. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nick.
Cool. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's really cool to be here. First time I think we've ever done a webinar together. So yeah, I think we've got a couple of questions there, which we'll get into in a minute. I'll just have a super quick background for anyone that doesn't know. I've been with PredictWind for nearly 10 years, and PredictWind's been around for about 15 years, and started by my boss, John Bilger, after he was the weatherman for Alingi, the Swiss team, in their previous America's Cup challenges. And they did a lot of model development there. And all the guys in the team wanted John to do forecasts for them when they went to different regattas, and he thought, oh, well, how hard can this be? And so he started PredictWind, and sort of what we've learned over the years is that the racing market is nowhere near as big as the cruising market, and the sort of the amount of tools and things that we can offer to cruisers is a lot greater, and so that's our primary focus is that cruising market. I mean, we focus on all marine leisure is the segment that we sort of work in, and that's what we specialize in. And I guess that's probably been why PredictWind's been successful, is we do have a focus on a pretty sharp focus on where we put our energy, and what we do. You know, and our goal is to, you know, our sort of our vision is to keep people safe at sea, is what we talk about a lot internally. You know, sort of, you know, like the lighthouse keepers of the ocean, is a saying that John would say. And yeah, and so you'll sort of see, probably, especially over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, with a lot of the stuff we do is focused around tools, warnings, etc., to sort of alert you to different situations. You know, you know, am I going to run into a thunderstorm or whatever? You know, and trying to give people the best information we can without telling them what to do. You know, we're great believers in seamanship, and you know, we're just a tool to help you make good decisions. So that's sort of really where we go. I think I'll sort of start with these questions. And so, yeah, there were some questions around the modeling. And so I guess one of the reasons, and the validation tool was mentioned, and the reason that we built the validation tool was partly to answer the question that you've posed, you know, which way the model is best. And it uses a mean average error during daylight hours to do that information. It's compared to get the model against an observation, and so it doesn't lie. I guess it's just numbers, and so there's no sort of personal thoughts there. So far as, I guess, my question around that, I mean, so they're not tweaked. Our models are not tweaked ECMWF or tweaked GFS. They're not a version of those models. It's a full model run from initial conditions. And so where the tie-in there is that we use the initial conditions. And so for anyone that's not aware of how most weather models are run, is that you get an initial conditions file, which is your snapshot of the world. You know, so at 12 o'clock UTC last night, they, you know, got all the satellite data, all the temperature measurements, the, you know, satellite imagery, plane data, all of that stuff, and that all goes into a supercomputer, and they spit out what is called an initial conditions file. And so we get that initial conditions file. We get one from EC, and we get one from NOAA, and so that's the same as what they do. So they then get that initial conditions file, and they put that, ECMWF would put their initial conditions file into their model, and they run their model, and it takes, you know, 4 hours from that point or whatever to run that model. And the same with NOAA. They get you know, their initial conditions data, and they put it into the GFS and the NAM, and I'm pretty sure that initializes the HER as well, the HRRR. And so we do the same thing. We get that initial conditions file, and it goes into our weather model. And so the PWG and the PWE are actually the same algorithm. And the difference is that initial conditions file. So it's actually nothing to do with the model output. We don't get the ECMWF output and adjust that, or the GFS output and adjust that. We actually run the model physics on Amazon world servers, and you know, it's a lot of computing power to do that. And I think to answer your question, is I think where some of the confusion comes in with that is that we at 50K resolution long term, if you look at the statistics, the PW models do not do well, and we're quite aware of that. And you even see in our departure planning, if you're doing a passage, you'll see that we put you know, if you're looking at longer term timeframes, you'll see us put the global models there ahead of our models. You know, so the ECMWF, UKMO, SPIRE, and GFS, and those global models generally do better longer term, and we've got studies and statistics, and you can see that. And so I think, you know, what you might see is, so I don't know what time frame you're looking at for that modeling, but where those models do extremely well is in areas with thermal, and when you're using the high resolution. So the high resolution runs, and so 1 kilometer resolution runs 36 hours out from the model runtime. So, which means that's today and tomorrow. So, you know, for my morning now, I've got my forecast for today and through till midday tomorrow, and that's my window for that 1 kilometer resolution. In some areas, you know, many areas will have the 8K resolution as well, and that does pretty well out sort of 3-4 days. But you know, you know, anything beyond that, you know, your longer term stuff, you do see better performance from the global models, and we don't, I don't think anyone's sort of trying to gloss that around. You know, that we talk about sort of the performance of models in different time periods and different situations quite a lot, and yeah, but I mean, so far as the PW models, I mean, here in Auckland, for instance, in summer, they're amazing. That, you know, like, if, you know, my kids sail nearly every day of the week, and, you know, thermal sort of stuff, you know, round sort of land and that, they do extremely well. If I was going up to Fiji, you know, short term for sure, but not long term. So I think that's probably something that you'd want to look at. I think also, if you're looking at weather routing in the PredictWind app or on the PredictWind website, it displays 50 kilometer resolution data. So unless you're using the offshore app and you download the high resolution grids, the PredictWind app and the forecast website, in your weather routing and your departure planning, will show a 50K map on the screen. And the routing's using the high res, but the actual display for those is actually using a 50K res map. So maybe it's resolution, maybe it's time, and you know, every dog has its day. Some days, some weather models do well, and some days they don't in different situations. And that's why we have those validation tools, and that's why we have more than one model, you know. And there's ways to sort of look at how you know, comparing observations. You know, you can go onto our observations page and you can see an observation and the wind map, and you can flick between the different models and see which one's performing well on that day, if there is uncertainty or you're feeling that one doesn't do well versus another. So I'm happy to answer more questions about weather models.
Bill, does that answer your question? Bill, do you want to come back in with your microphone? Does that answer your question? Basically, what you're saying there, Nick, is that the PredictWind moderated version is quite good for the high resolution short-term forecast, but loses accuracy as you look further out compared to the global.
100%.
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil's not opened his microphone. There's another question on there, Nick, at the moment from Lars Hellman. I'll maybe ask Lars to ask his question directly because it's quite long. So I'll get him to open his microphone. But if you want to address the one that Brian Russell came in on, which was
I'll do that around the isochronal routing. So we've never run an isochronal router. They tend to have trouble around land, avoiding land. I mean, the best example of that would be Expedition. So we run a nodal router, which, so far as, you know, we did some studies on that. We looked at Expedition, Adrena, you know, the stuff that the racing guys use, and did a whole lot of comparisons when we updated our router a few years back. And yeah, I'm not totally sure what would be easier about an isochronal router. I mean,
For
use isochronal routers.
the uninitiated, and I put my hand up here. Tell us the difference between isochronal and
so if you
routers.
don't know what an isochronal router is, basically, the easiest way to think about it is that if you look at your polar curve, hang on, I don't know, I can probably, if you looked at your polar curve, and so for each, if you were going from A to B, from each point, there would be a ring every hour as to where you'd get to. And so whatever true wind angle and true wind speed, where you're going to get to on those rings that go away from the point that you're at. And yeah, I mean, essentially, from what we can see, they don't do as good a job. They don't look at as many possibilities. When you run a route on our router, it's looking at 2 billion, it does 2 billion calculations or something absolutely crazy like that. And so yeah, when we do that routing, we are doing a lot of other things at the same time. And I'm not the technical guy as to why we could or couldn't do that, but we have things like depth avoidance in the router. Like a route that goes over land or puts you into shallow water isn't really a worthwhile route because it's not accurate, right? If it's sending you over land. So we can put things like depth avoidance. We're using we can use the high resolution tidal currents. We can use the ocean currents, of course. And then, nowadays we have the wave partition data in there. So we are also calculating at the same time, the wind wave, the combined wind wave and swell, the primary swell, the secondary swell, and the tertiary swell, and how that interacts with your boat. So, and that's all baked into our nodal router. And so the nodal router does work differently. And to explain the full depths of it is probably beyond the scope of what we're really here for. But yeah, I mean, we did actually recently build an isochronal router for the virtual regatta game for the Vendée. Which we're actually not allowed to use. So and to be fair, it took our guy, we actually have a Swedish gentleman who is our weather routing guru. It took him about 2 days to build it. So it's pretty an isochronal router is a pretty basic tool.
There's a comment on there from Patrick Michael about that. I think if you can see that in the chat.
I mean, I don't know how long QTVLM has been around, but it's, I think, we've been doing weather routing for sort of, I don't know, 13, 14 years, from my understanding, and there was isochronal routers around before then. Yeah, I think it's sort of the, Adrena Expedition. Those guys have been doing it longer than
okay. Do you want to make progress with your presentation, or do you want to take the question off, Lars? Your call.
No, happy to keep. I like
so Lars, you can open your microphone, unmute your microphone, and ask. Yeah, there you go ahead.
Okay, hi guys. Well, maybe this is sort of off topic, really, but for us, sailing on a quite tight budget for well, infinitive time, hopefully, sort of, at least until we keel over. Cost is one thing that is something we have to monitor, and we actually started out like most old guys with an HF radio and a Pactor modem, and was downloading grip files with that. And for us, that worked very well for many years. However, when we were going down to Antarctica, unfortunately, the sail mail station in Chile had burned down to the ground, so we had to find something different. And then that's how we came in contact with Iridium Go and the PredictWind system, which we were using for quite a few years happily sailing down to Antarctica, up to Patagonia, over to French Polynesia. Then Starlink, of course, came and became the big thing, and it gives sort of course, tons of more performance and other things as well, but the cost was much cheaper than the Radio Go package. So my question is really, so what is going on in that respect? Because we would be happy to keep on using our Radio Go with the PredictWind package, but from a financial standpoint, that doesn't make any sense, and we don't really want a Starlink on board the boat either. So, well, that's really my question. What about the cost of the Radio Go PredictWind package?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether your offshore, your global roaming offshore with your Starlink is cheaper anymore. Maybe if you're using a residential plan, but I think they've cut that stuff down. Now they're sort of not allowing people to do that. But so far as Iridium goes, I mean, obviously we're an Iridium supplier, but we don't have any control over how they price their products or what they do. You know, we try, but yeah, we don't have any control over the airtime prices or anything. You know, the margins in that are very, very low. It's, you know, we do it and we support it because we have our software works with it, but you know, we're at the end of the day, we're the provider, and we're the tools provider, and you know, that's a tool that people can use to get their weather offshore, and has served many people very well for a long time. And I mean, if it were me and I would pay the money for the Starlink because it's just so awesome. Power, you know, if you can manage the power. And yeah, see, someone's just saying that their global roaming has doubled from October from 200 to 400 US. So, you know, there's more expensive than a Go, but, you know, you have much more options. But I would always have the Go on board. We did manage to get, you know, for redundancy, we did manage to beat Iridium into giving us some lower cost plans so that people could use the device in that way, so that they could have their tracking running the whole time, and perhaps have their tracking going through their Go, and on a lower plan. And so you know, that was about getting them to put a whole lot of text messages into the basic plan so that we could do the tracking. Because what people were finding was that people with Starlink were turning them off, and then they were disappearing off the earth for 12 hours. And for anyone watching, that can be a little bit, you know, where you are, can be a little bit disconcerting. And so yeah, so there's I mean, I would have both if it were me, but I understand your points on the cost. But yeah, we have no control over that, unfortunately. I mean, it would be great, right, if they you know, made that price point difference so great that it was really you know, a no-brainer to have a Go. And because I mean, you know, not everyone wants their kids or to be on the internet when they go sailing, right? You know, it's part of the beauty of it is not being too connected. Yeah.
Do you want to press on with your presentation a bit, and we'll bring the questions in a bit later on? Is that right?
Well, I'm happy to talk about anything.
Okay,
so,
we change your plan? That's cool. We'll keep it flexible. So there's a comment earlier from Judith, which I think Behan has referred back to. So if I maybe ask Judith to open her microphone, which she should be able to, I think, because I opened it earlier on. So
Behan can probably do a better job of this than me.
I'm going to allow both Judith and Behan to put the questions direct. There you go. So we'll go Behan first, and then Judith, please.
Hi, I hope my audio is okay. We're running the generator right now, so it might be a little bit loud. But to Jill's comment about feeling like she needed to look at gusts to have a better sense of the higher end winds that they're experiencing, we think that's actually a really good thing to do as a default. If you only have time to look at wind or gust, look at gust. So I think when all of us look at wind, we're thinking that's what I'm going to experience, but it's actually the average of the upper third, and so that means you're often going to experience winds much higher than the quote wind unquote forecast. And here's where looking at gust is going to give you a much more accurate representation of the real feel that you're going to have.
Can I cut in here?
Go ahead, Judith.
Yeah, well, while that's very true, it just seems then I don't have any estimates for the gusts. I mean, I would much rather that the median wind was fairly accurate. I know it's never going to be completely accurate, but at least fairly accurate. And then have the gusts so I also know how high it can get up. I mean, we started calling it wild guess wind instead of predict wind.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
and that's like, oh, sorry, Nick, if I can just jump in. I
no,
think
you go,
that's
Bihan.
it's a misnomer of the product then, because actually you're not trying to predict the wind, you're trying to show data so that us mere mortals can make interpretations. I guess what I wanted to add though, and what might be helpful for Judith, and where it's useful looking at both of them, is that gap between wind and gust. That's going to give you a sense of that volatility. The bigger that gap, able to forecast.
Yeah, sure. No, I can do that. I have no problem with that. It's just I just find it a little bit misleading. But I have no problem. That's what I'm doing. I just look at the gusts and then I figure that the real gusts will be higher than that, and that's about it. It's no big problem. It's just that it's kind of annoying.
I mean, I guess
I can pitch in a little bit there as well, as Judith was addressing that question to us regarding our cruise up to Patagonia. In general, since we started using grid files a long time ago, different media. So I think I started using grid files back in the mid 2007. I started using grid files when we sailed over to Scotland from Sweden the first time. And I learned over the years that basically just take what you see and not sheet one, click up another 5 knots or 10 knots, and you're on the safe side, and that's been pretty accurate because, and that sort of includes like what they said about the gusting, and we've been fine with that. Don't take it as you see it on the average wind speed. Just put a safety margin on one of those little flags on the wind arrows, and you're good. That's our experience in general. And also when it comes to routing, I could the way we've used the routing program normally is that if we do a passage, like particularly where we went from Chile down to Antarctica, we do the general routing, and if we see that the routing models, the different routing models are all over the chart, we know that it's going to be extremely unpredictable, and we try not to sail. When we see the routing predictions sort of move together, we have a pretty safe feeling that the weather's going to be at least somewhat predictable.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do, isn't it? Just look at the
And it is exactly that, because if the same way, if you get different wind speeds in all the different models, then you also know it's going to be volatile, and and then I just count on the one that says the most wind.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's sort of really, you touched on some really great stuff there. Like if the models aren't in alignment, that means that they're all, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I mean, and in that situation, I'd look out the window and go, okay, which one's actually matching up to what we have now? What model's the closest to what we have? And I think about the wind speeds, like it's an interesting comment, and but you're talking. I've sat in on some modeling meetings, and after about 5 minutes, it was way over my head. Weather modeling is, a very complicated science, and I think let's just talk about the ECMWF, for example. The science and resource and validation that goes into that is pretty massive. So if when someone says, oh, well, it's always this, or it's always lower, or it's always, whichever way, are you looking at, what resolution are you looking at? And are you near land, or is this in the ocean? And which part of the world is it? I mean, there can be different things that do factor into that. And, I'd really dig into, if you consistently see those differences, why do you see those differences? Would be quite interesting. And where do you see them? But just on that, something I do, and I talk about this with all my kids sail, and before they go sailing, I'll say to them, so we'll look at trends, and so is the trend today increasing or decreasing? And so if the forecast said it was going to be 10 knots and they get out there and it's 12 or 13, they know that it's probably going to the trend is still going to be the same. It's going to be increasing throughout the day, or decreasing, whichever way it's going. And so, or we would look at which model's doing a good job at that time, and if there was a lot of uncertainty. But yeah, trends are definitely good, and and we'll always, because the yacht racing, will be like, is it going left or right? Yeah, but and Bihan mentioned about the difference between the averages and the gusts. Obviously, at your low end, we don't sort of under 12 knots, we don't really talk about gusts. That shouldn't really be something that's factoring in too much. Yeah, but as you get up into your higher wind speeds, that difference between your gust and your average wind speed is definitely something that you should be considering, your cape levels and whatnot. And but you run a route, and if those elements are there, you'll get warnings about them nowadays in PredictWind, because you don't always necessarily look at the right things, or remember to look at everything. So we have those little reminders there to
Nick, there's a question from Connor. Do you want to come in, Connor? Your microphone's open.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I've just I use PredictWind. It's a fantastic tool, and congratulations and well done on developing it. Just one thing, the graphs that you put up. I mean, there's a setting that you can set them on 1 day or 10 days.
Yeah.
But I find the 10-day one is very hard to read, especially if you're on a phone. I was wondering if you would consider putting something in between.
Yeah, and I actually think that we do have, we run a system called Track for our development, and I'm pretty sure we have a ticket for that. And we actually do have new graphs in the coming up as well. And yeah, I mean, I think the graphs could be better, and completely agree. I'm 99% sure that we do have something in the system to do exactly what you're saying. To make those timeframes more flexible, and possibly even have more increments.
Thanks, Nick. There's a question from Steve Bradley. Steve?
Yeah, are you have you started to use the data that's received from data hubs in any way to validate and improve the models and the algorithms?
Yeah.
Or is that
no?
Not, or
No.
Are you planning to do it?
It's been discussed, but you'd need to get a reasonable mass of them, reasonable number of them to, uploading the data to make it worthwhile, to make it a usable data set, especially for global modeling. Yeah, but I mean, the data's there, and we could. I mean, the cool thing about that data is that, and we're trying to make the visibility on those better, is that you can see other people's data. So if if you're doing a passage and there's other people on that passage and they've got data hubs, you can, and they're uploading that data, you can see what they've got ahead of you. So those observations on the ocean can be useful, and again for matching up with your weather models.
It'd be really good to see that. I mean, it's I quite like what Google have done with their mapping when you're driving along the road and it says there's a traffic jam ahead, and then you get a prompt to ask you if it's still there as you go past it and everything. I appreciate they've got a huge volume of data being fed in, but it'd be nice to see that. I think in the future. I think. So thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely the data hubs are have been a cool little device, and on the AIS front, it's definitely starting to make a difference. But there's actually a lot of them out there, and as I say, they're actually it's quite hard to see them on the observations page at the moment, but we're just trying to improve that at the moment because, for instance, about sort of month ago, there was a massive exodus from the Pacific Islands back to New Zealand, and before the insurance, most people's insurance runs out. And you could, on the map, it looked like you could have walked to New Zealand. There were that many boats. And we knew that there was lots of data hubs there, but you actually had to really zoom in to see them. So we're just working on improvement on seeing that data. But yeah, at some stage when there was if there's enough of them out there, that would be a data set that we could, put into models.
There's a question from Guy Spencer. Guy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hi Nick. Thank you very much for your PredictWind service. It's really good. We've used it for a long time. When I'm doing a weather route, I always look at the graph, and near the bottom of the graph, it gives you percentage of time that the waves will be adverse to your boat speed, and the percentage of time it won't. But quite often, I don't get that data at all. Am I doing something wrong, or depends on the route?
So that's it's the amount that it's affecting your polar. And so
yes,
whether it's slowing your polar or increasing your polar. So if you're getting nothing, then it's not changing your polar greatly. It's nothing is not a bad thing on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
One more question, and then we'll let you press on, Nick. So Judith wants to put a supplementary question in. Judith, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking. I mean, my husband, he said, does PredictWind consider tunneling effects in narrow waterways, like along the Norwegian coast, if you're sailing inside the Skerries, along the Swedish coast, many other places where it's narrow. And Ben says that they have seen PredictWind reflect that funneling effect between the islands in the Caribbean. But of course, that's a little... probably slightly wider than what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so I think this probably almost comes back to the very first question that we had today, and I think it's what you're talking about is really related to resolution, so the granularity of the modeling.
Yeah.
And so so far as the global models go, the ECMWF has the highest resolution at 9 kilometers. So that's a 9 kilometer square.
Right.
And so you're not gonna, if that waterway is, you might see some of it, but you're not going to see it greatly, because the land schematics in the model are not gonna get that very well. And so depending on exactly where you are, this would be a situation where your PWG or your PWE, if there was 1 kilometer of resolution modeling there, it would do a good job of it. But again, if your fjord or whatever is narrower than that, it's not gonna do that good a job.
Because they certainly display wind shadow zones, don't they? So
yeah, 100%, and that's why you do your high res stuff. But it's for around land, around the coast. I mean, I can around here in Auckland here. I mean, in fact, even you can in my little background picture here. We can. Wind speed's always slower over land, and if you don't have the resolution, you're never going to see it. High resolution, we'll see it, but as I say, the high resolution's only short term. And yeah, but you know, and that so you know, that's your land effects, your thermal effects, high resolution, short time frames. You
Nick,
will see it, but you need to realize what resolution you're actually looking
That
at.
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Can I just ask a question about the density of the information sources? So in the South Pacific, obviously, there's not a lot of weather stations, but presumably a lot of your observations are satellite derived. So what sort of coverage do you actually have, like in French Polynesia, to actually build those models on? What observations are you actually basing on compared to, say, a more heavily cruised area in Northern Europe? Or
And yeah, that's a good question. So that was what I was saying at the start. So PredictWind does not collect that data. We use that data from ECMWF and from.
But I guess that's the question I'm asking, really, is the ECMWF, how dense is the data that they are collating?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
just be one weather station in Tahiti.
100% familiar, but I mean, I'm sure that, I mean, what I do know is that, you know, during the pandemic, you know, we did see some model accuracy decline from the lack of flights.
Right.
But you know, another reason why we have different models, you know, the Spire model, you know, they collect their initial conditions data a different way, and so we did see that it would perform well in places that don't have you know, a lot of observational data. So you know, models generally do better where there is more observational data, but you know, there's obviously a lot of satellite data collection as well. So ships, planes, satellites, but you know, you don't over the sea. You know, these sparsely populated places, you're not going to get like balloon data and stuff like that. So
yeah, sure, that's great. I was going to let you get on, but there's one more question there from Mike Beach. Mike, do you want to open your microphone? Can't hear at the moment, Mike, but we can see your question, which he just wants to thank you. A bit premature because he's not finished yet. But Mike, you're welcome to come in if you can open your microphone, if indeed you have a microphone. Yeah. Tell us about the data hubs, Nick, and you were touching on them there in being able to see when people are measured from one boat to another. You can see what wind speeds people are measuring at the top of their mast 50 miles away or 100 miles away, which I find incredibly useful, particularly in a sparsely cruised area. Are there any developments that you've got planned for the data hubs? Obviously, the AIS over the horizon stuff is fantastic. I was telling you last night how we were using it in the Tuamotus to try and work out when slack tide was in motus 50 miles away by watching other boats going through and what they were battling against or battling with. Have you got any plans for development with the data hubs?
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah, I mean the data hub does have quite a bit of development going into it. You know, I mean, we probably could. Does it? I mean, I'm assuming some people don't know what it is. So why don't we have a little look at it?
Yep.
I'll just find the right page to share. Must be this one with the zoom. The zoom on it. I don't know. Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know what a data hub is, it is this little device here, and you can plug it in to your NMEA backbone, and so it can read everything going through that. It gives you the ability to then share that data on board your boat, and then so you know, whether you're on an iPad, you can send, or you know, your phone or chart plotter, it can send some stuff back there too. And it does a bunch of other stuff. Originally, we started developing this like pre-Starlink, and what the original use case was when people turned their Iridium devices off, people still wanted to be able to track when they were on using a local SIM card. And so this could do that, and still can do that. So if you want to keep your tracking going, you could do that, but because it'll connect to whatever data source you've got. This day and age, you can connect it to your Starlink, and it'll keep your tracking going. The only problem is if you turn your Starlink off, it can't transmit it. But it's sort of developed a lot over the time, as we were just talking about. This guy he's got an America's Cup boat or something that he can go faster than the wind. But you can upload your wind speed and direction off your boat. And it's as you say, it's pretty cool to be able to see that stuff from other boats around you, and have that little network. So you can have that turned on so that it will actually go into PredictWind, and you can look in the app and on the observations and see the data hub observations around you. And also on your tracking page, people can see how windy it is, how fast you're going, that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool for that. This is what you were just talking about. And when we first talked about this in our team meeting, I sort of thought, I don't know about that. But it has been very, very popular. It's not replacing your normal AIS feed, and if you have a data hub and you are getting this over the horizon AIS, your local targets, AIS targets, will always override anything coming in on the data hub. But the data hub is bringing in all the AIS targets from that are available on the through the AIS aggregators, and you can display those on your chart plotter on any device on your boat, and so sort of see beyond what you've got in front of you. So whether it's fishing fleets, just other boats, shipping lanes, if you're in an inland waterway, what's around the next corner, because the developer of the data hub, actually, he did a big trip up the inland waterways in the US, and he could see whether there was a barge around the next corner because it wouldn't show up on his terrestrial AIS. So that's the feedback from that's been really amazing, actually, and people really like that.
A great safety feature in the Pacific this year, when boats got into difficulties, you can see at a glance on your chart plotter what boats are actually within range of the casualty, way beyond what you can see with your own masthead AIS receiver, without incurring satellite charges for marine traffic or whatever, which is the other way to get it in if you've got the data connection. But no, fantastic. And also you're aggregating that data and sending it back to the web as well, so you will show up on marine traffic and other. I'm sure Nick, but the Ocean Cruising Club collects all of that data and puts it onto our OCC fleet map to give a real-time tracking of all of our boats worldwide, which has been very popular. So we brought that in. It gets more and more sophisticated every year.
So as just mentioned, that the data hub will also can also collect all of your AIS targets and send them back to the aggregators, which is pretty cool. So you're contributing to that network, and we had some people put them on some exploration ships that were going down to Antarctica, and all of a sudden you can see all these boats down there that you couldn't see before. Because it's acting like a terrestrial station.
Few more questions have come in, Nick.
Okay.
I think let's take them in order. I think the first one was Lars wants to come back in. Lars, you've got your microphone ready to go. Lars Hellman.
Yep, sure thing. One thing that I've been thinking about is that one thing that is sort of really important when you're out there doing passages in tricky areas is to keep track on the really nasty weather systems, like whether you're in a hurricane or a cyclone or typhoon area. Normally you shouldn't be there if that season, but anyway, what I see sometimes is that you get on the news from NOAA or the hurricane trackers that something is happening in the Atlantic or wherever, but you can't really see it on PredictWind yet. And I guess that's because they can see the development of a hurricane before it's even happening based on water temperatures, humidity, and stuff like that. And then you don't really see it on PredictWind until it's sort of too late, or more or less. What do you think about that?
Yeah, great question. So we are working on that. So we've always had the GMDSS text forecasts, and that's and usually that if it's they're written by meteorologists, and so they would usually be indicated in there, but that's one of those things where going and reading it, working out where you're looking at, plotting all that stuff, it can take a while. And that was why we developed the graphical GMDSS that we had now. So it's basically an AI tool is reading all of those GMDSS text forecasts each time they're released, and it is converting that, and any features are then put into an image on the map. So you can turn that on and off on the map and in PredictWind. And where we're developing that at the moment is to show further ahead in time, about it, so you can scroll forward and then and you'll see that. At the moment it mainly shows you now, and I think just recently it can do 2 or 3 days, but we're trying to make that show further in the future, which would be an alert. We're also working on some features around alerting, and I mean slightly different use case. This was more in response to sort of some of the events in the Med this year. Like they were in the GMDSS, and they might have been some of the time, when I went back and looked at them, they might have been in one model, but some of those extreme weather events. And so basically, if you've got a location set, you're going to be able to be alerted as if there's a GMDSS warning for where you're sitting, you'll get an alert saying, so you can go and have a look to see that. So that's sort of something, that's probably the best I can answer that question as to what we're looking at to try and alert people to those things. And
thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
We've got a question from
that sounds just going to round off there. That sounds really great, because we've been using navtext, the old-fashioned navtext, for a long time, and they normally pop up, automatic text messages telling you that okay, something is developing, or we have a gale warning, or whatever. And if you could provide something like that through the Iridium Go, whatever, that you get an immediate message that something is coming, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, alerts and warnings is something that we're spending a lot of time developing at the moment. Just as I said at the start, our goal is to try and help people be safe, and if we can try do our best to try and give people those alerts, then we will.
Nick, there's a question from Judith again.
Right,
about how much data does the data logger use? It's tiny, isn't it?
Yeah, so for the tracking, it's tiny. And even the AIS, it's pretty small. I don't actually. That's probably a question for the support team, and they would know that straight away. I know the person that would know that instantly. But it is small. Even the AIS data is small. You could do it on exec. You wouldn't want to do it on a go. I suppose, yeah. I don't know whether you want to do it on a go. But Starlink I wouldn't even be worried about it.
Yeah.
Well, the moment all we have is Go. Thank you, though.
Yeah. So, if you've got to go for tracking, I would still use the standard way of sending an SMS from the go. I wouldn't use the data hub for your tracking. And probably a direct question for our support team on that one as to my understanding is I don't think your AIS stuff's going to really work very well with the Go. Just on that though, so for AIS, so for before we even did the over the horizon stuff, when you do a download in the offshore app, there's a little tab in the download settings where you can actually turn on AIS. And so you'll get all the AIS targets at that time for 300 nautical miles around you. So that's been in there for a couple of years, I think. And so you can get that data via the Go.
Never saw that.
Yeah, so it is there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll ask Bihan to open her mic. She's got a comment she wants to make, and then we will go after that back to Steve Bradley and then to Phil Heaton. So Bihan.
Oh, hi, sorry. I lost track of where I'm commenting, but I love that over the horizon aspect of the AIS and was just mentioning earlier we're in the Western Pacific and there are Chinese fishing fleets out here that make inconsistent use of AIS. So as soon as you know there's any target out there, it's super important to consider that there may also be like ships and long lines and things like that. So it's been really helpful for us this year.
If you can see one, there's possibly many if it's designated as a fishing boat, or even if it's not and it's sitting there, right?
Steve, do you want to come back in? Steve Bradley.
Yeah, I mean, I was only really making the comments about the value of the data hub and the AIS in remote areas. I mean, this year we were in Greenland this year. You're leaving Iceland and heading across to Greenland. We were seeing boats that get 50 miles away from the coast of Ireland, then just disappear from any sort of AIS, marine traffic or whatever, and they disappear for weeks at that point in time because there's nothing to receive their normal radio transmissions, their normal AIS radio transmissions. Whereas, if you've got a data hub on board and you're transmitting your own AIS data via the internet, you are completely visible to other ships and things like that are in the area all the time. So I think it's a huge safety feature. I personally, I think it's probably the number one feature of the data hub from my perspective. So we absolutely love it. So
that's awesome.
Question from Phil Heaton. Phil. You can probably is Phil opening his microphone?
I can see the question and I can take it and read it out.
Okay. I think you probably hear me now. Yeah, the question's really about looking ahead. The DeepMind GraphCast AI model demonstrated its worth with Hurricane Beryl, and I was wondering what's, if anything, PredictWind are doing in relation to getting AI involved in their weather forecasting.
Yeah, great question. A lot. So yeah, we do a bunch of different stuff around AI at the moment, and we've even looked at helping you out interpret your weather out and departure planning, and but it's sort of a that's one of those ones in that respect where we sort of want to be careful about telling people things as opposed to leading them to the water, but they've got to do the drinking kind of thing. But specifically to your question, yes, we have the GraphCast model, we have the AIFS, we have the Fengwu, I think it's called, and another AI model that I can't remember the name of that we're running validation on at the moment. And they do pretty well. And then and we have an AI guy, and we could train one ourselves as well. But it's moving pretty fast. But I think that you could expect to see one or two AI models be in PredictWind very soon. From what I've seen in the validation studies, they're doing well, and obviously the accuracy around the hurricanes has certainly shown them to prove their worth in that respect, and we've just been looking at how they perform against all the other weather models that we currently have, and just making sure that we're not adding something in that's inferior. But yeah, I think the most we have looked at the GraphCast, but I think the most likely model that you'll see come from us initially will be the AIFS, which is the ECMWF AI model, which looks to perform better than the medium range EC. And we've got, I think it actually performs better for the stuff that we're looking at, with wind speed and direction, than the GraphCast. So yeah, it's very interesting and it's quite exciting. And the cool thing about them is the processing time is so fast. Like at the moment, for the 000Z model run, for ECMWF, you don't get it till 8 hours later, or 7 hours later. The GFS and the PWG, you get them about 4 or 5 hours later, from that initial condition snapshot. Whereas these, from what I understand, we should be able to see these, an hour or two later, because the compute time is less. So yeah, it's definitely an exciting area, and yeah, and a continual evaluation, really.
Thanks, Phil and Nick. This is a question or more statement from Adrienne. She's very welcome to open her microphone. She's asking, is there going to be a PredictWind presentation or just the Q&A? I guess I hold my hand up here is because we changed the ground rules when we started the webinar, didn't we, Nick? So,
I'm happy to talk about anything.
Could you just point people to where people could see a kind of instructional webinar on PredictWind? Have you got those on your website or?
Yeah. So, there would be a few things that I would say. Any questions that you do ever have about PredictWind, like 100% reach out to our support team. You will get an AI bot answer your question first while we're on that subject. But if you just say, if you want to talk to a human, you say, I want to talk to a human. And, the people on our support desk are awesome. They're sailors. They've sailed around the world. They're cool people. They know the product well. And they'll answer any of your questions you have. We also have a massive help center. And we have, whether you're a video person or you like reading things and doing them, we pretty much cover most things there. We work on that a lot. And we do have lots of webinars online. And I think if you want to look at, so long as you can handle listening to my voice, we do have a lot of webinars on how to. We call it an Atlantic crossing webinar, but really it's just a how-to, how you might use it, the offshore app on Passage, or how you might use your weather routing on a Passage. So we do have a lot of webinars on that, and I could sit here and run through that, but I think it's actually really nice to answer the specific questions.
I could certainly vouch for the quality of your helpline. It's fantastic. They send you the videos as to how to do something. But Adrienne, is there a specific, I'm sorry we haven't come up to your expectations, but is there a specific question that you want to put to this human, unartificially intelligent bot that we've got online tonight? You're very welcome to put your question to him if you have one. I think she may not have a microphone, but come back to us if you can talk to us. Question from Brian Russell. Brian, you should be able to open your microphone and ask the question directly. And so I'll read the question. Some features like the troughs and waves and impulses are difficult to parse. Is there any way to for PredictWind to highlight these types of features? Well, there is they do show up, don't they? Go ahead, Nick.
So can you translate that for me?
Brian, have we got you online still? I can't see you on the list, but can you elaborate on your question, Brian Russell? I think what he's saying is that the waves and troughs don't naturally show up on perhaps the most basic screens on PredictWind, and you have to interrogate them a bit deeper to actually see where the troughs are.
Ah, are we talking about like being able to see H's and L's on the map, or?
Yeah, I don't think he's still online, actually. I think he's gone off. So maybe we'll pass over that because we've got more questions. Oh, Behan's back online again.
And so far as presentations go, like I can talk about PredictWind it's in itself, but I mean I don't,
Well, having done the Q&A, why don't you give us your 15-minute spiel on PredictWind?
Well, I'm happy to talk about some of the stuff that we did mention that we'd talk about, but by all means, I'm happy to keep answering questions too. And yeah, I mean, I'll just new features.
There you go. Tell us about new features. We chatted about this last night. Go tell us about new features.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess we've touched on some stuff around the the AI models is definitely somewhere where we're putting a lot of well, not a lot, but there's people working on that. We're doing, and I think it's some of the stuff that we've mentioned. We're doing more and more on alerts. Making the GMDSS alerts. We just added lightning in the other day. And there's some interesting, and it's actually might be live today fully. Like you're going to be able to see that on every map. Nice to be able to see that stuff against your routing. It's only real time. And stuff like that.
The lightning data, that's taken from the Cape projections, is it, or is that
no? So
it's
actual real time
right
observation data.
So where there is actually lightning happening rather than where you forecast it might happen.
Yeah, and so it's just more for people to be able to see that lining that up with the forecast, you can see that that system is actually nasty. So yeah, that's going to overlay on every map, which is I think that's great.
For the high latitude brigade, Nick, your satellite layer I find really helpful to see where the cloud and the rain is, and I think that's supplemented when you've got radar with radar information. But for the high latitude brigade, ice, is that an overlay that you can start to put on?
I think we've looked at it. I maybe we haven't necessarily understood the demand. I mean,
there will be a tiny demand, but that shouldn't stop you.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'd probably have to go and ask about the ice, showing the ice stuff, and what Behan's talking about with the cloud to cloud and cloud to ground. So if you click on them, you can see that, and you can see whether they're positive or negative as well. So we do show them, and so we've actually and that was actually since we often we learn when we push these features out, and the question sort of was posed pretty quickly. Well, would it be great to be able to show, would you show those lightning bolts on the screen? Would they be different colors if they were cloud to ground, or cloud to cloud? And I'm just trying to remember what Arno said about it. We in our team meeting, he's a meteorologist, and I think they can be mixed in, was what he said. But I think if that is, it's definitely probably a more dangerous scenario. So, it's something that we're working on. And if you want to send me a message about that, Bihan, I'll pass it on.
It's literally just come out over the last week or so, hasn't it?
Yeah. And so, and that's the cool thing, is that when we do stuff like that and then we get feedback on it and we're like, oh, we didn't even think about that, and that's one of the cool things about PredictWind is, we do listen to what people say, and and that's how we learn, and it's cool.
I'll send you a copy of all this Q&A when we finish, Nick, because it might be quite useful for you. More comments. I've asked Hilary Lagan to open her microphone. Hilary, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. We've been using Data Hub, but often I find it a bit hit and miss as to whether I can find the blogs and data from other yachts that are transmitting. I know there's a lot of information there, but perhaps you could show us how to access it in sort of a fairly quick, reliable way. That'd be great.
Yeah, so there's we'll go into local knowledge. I think that's the question, the real question there. I'll just share this page, and come over here. So I mean, if you were in a cruising group, or in a rally, and you went to that rally page, you're about to click on any boat, and you're about to see their blogs or their track, and that would also be the same if you had your own friends group set up, which you can do, or the other way is, as you alluded to, was to go into local knowledge and have a look. And so you can turn on, have different filters in here, and I'll just move my zoom controls, and also change your layers. And so you'll see we've also got AIS targets in here, and if I'll just clear all my filters, and if I find some boats, I mean, any of these, you'd have. So I guess the real question is, to see whether they had a data hub or not. I can't tell, and hope these people, whoever they are, don't mind me putting them on the thing. But so I can click on the boat. So any of these little sailboats on the local knowledge map are they're tracking with PredictWind, and so whether they have a data hub or not, and so then I can view their GPS tracking page, and they don't have any blog posts, but if they had blog posts, they would be down here, and they don't have a data hub, but we can see that they have done a fairly big trip. But the blog posts would be down here, and so for any boat that I wanted to look at, I could look at them up on there. If I go back and sorry, I can look on this page. I can also search. So if I knew, assuming you're here, well, hang on. So it's just they're down here. I can change that range as well, and the time. But if I go to Bihan's page, I can see her track and where they are, and I can see their blog posts down here. So and they have a data hub on, and so we can see their wind speed and direction, which is pretty cool. So does that answer your question, or have I missed the point?
No, that's good. But can you also see then the history on their wind speed, for example?
No, and that is something that we're actually looking to do.
Oh.
So and to be able to animate the tracks as well.
All right. Okay. So you can perhaps only see the history on your own data hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
you can see other people's wind history on the data hub.
That's what I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
If you looked at them as an observation,
yeah. So
then you would see their
you get a graph of the wind speed.
So just like any observation, if I go into wind observations, I could. It would be the same for a data hub. Usually, there's a data hub sitting here, that I wanted to look at. But it's the same as any wind observation. You can see the history. So if I go to Rangitoto Lighthouse, and I can look at whatever period of up 48 hours of the history of that observation. And so for some of these observations, we actually use data hubs. So I know it was, during the America's Cup, it didn't take the teams very long to realize that there were boats around the course perimeter with data hubs, and I got an email from one of the coaches of one of the teams going, "Can you tell me more about this data hub data that we're looking at?" And so they were looking at the data hubs around the race courses for their sort of pre-start strategy. So
fantastic.
Okay, so there's two ways of looking at it then. So either observations or through the local knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Lars wanted to clarify the question from Brian about the trough data. Lars, go ahead.
Yeah, I just felt that it was a little bit unclear, and the trough is, on the PredictWind, you can see the isobars. You can see where the low and high pressures are, but then you have these troughs, these sort of wavy, long, low pressure areas that sort of move over the oceans and land and what have you. And you can see that when you look at least back in the days, when you looked at the weather chart on the television, there you can see the meteorologists painting this trough coming in towards whatever area living.
Yeah, so we do have that in a limited fashion, I guess. And this is from the GMDSS data. And so if I click on that feature, it tells me about this front, and I could actually click on that, and this highlighted part is talking about the ridge and the trough. So that's the feature that we're looking at. The rest of it's just part of that GMDSS warning. So the feature I clicked on tells me about it here, but that is the best that we have so far as that goes. And I think it's done a pretty nice job. So yeah,
okay, I never seen that on PredictWind. When I've used it, is there a particular feature you have to activate?
Yeah,
or?
For sure. So I've just clicked on the model there. I'll just move my my zoom controls out the way. So it's this here. So if I turn that GMDSS off or on. And so
okay, brilliant. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and so that's the same with the lightning. Lightning should be there. Oh, lightning is there. Look.
We use that quite a lot, that layer. So it's good to know about. It's good.
Yeah.
Super.
And so, you know, we've got all sorts of warnings going on here, different things. And I can see why people want to turn it off from time to time as well. But it's nice, you know, we can see what this low is about, you know, and is what you know what they're saying about it. So yeah.
Okay, is this available when you have downloaded like a grip file on your
Yes.
iPad or your laptop in the
Yes,
boat?
yeah, so that you can see this everywhere. So whether you're looking at the PredictWind app, the offshore app, you know, and you're downloading grids, this is an option that you can select.
Nick, does it depend upon your subscription level? I'm never quite sure what you get with
the G. I'm pretty sure that in you would have to. It's definitely a paid feature. This graphical stuff, and I'd have to look as to what level it is so far as it's satellite. Usually, satellite stuff is a standard or pro feature.
Sure.
So, but yeah, is the GMDSS graphical a standard or pro? I'd have to look. You can see it on the PredictWind website. I'm pretty sure it's a basic feature. So yeah, it's not, you know, and PredictWind app. Yeah, what the satellite version is, I'm not totally clear on it.
Just show us the satellite version, because that combines radar. We had this discussion yesterday.
Yes, so we can go and have a look at that.
In some areas where you've got radar coverage, or do you mean it's radar from the satellite, or is this land-based radar? I'm never quite sure.
So there's two things. There's the satellite image,
yeah,
and then there's rain radar.
Yeah, but they're shown on the same screen, aren't they? From memory,
you can have them both. So I think if I go to the rain radar, I can turn the lightning on. Hang on, or if I go to the satellite imagery, I can turn the rain radar on. I think it's the way around it is. Yeah. Is it gone? On here, I should be able to turn my rain radar on, but maybe when they've because the lightning just went live this morning. Maybe they've accidentally taken the ability to turn the radar on at the same time.
Okay.
Because you should be able to have them both on at the same time. Yeah, I think someone's made a mistake when they've implemented that.
That satellite layer we found really useful.
Yeah, and with the radar as well, it's better. But so it's kind of nice now that we have got those lightning features in there, and you can have the GMDSS in there. And if we had the radar on, it would actually be better again.
The lightning seems to be telling me not to go to Southeast Asia. Is that the message of this talk?
Yeah, and I think there was a little. So that looks like that's got
wow,
radar there. I think there was a comment before about the time of these lightning things. So as they fade out, they're older. And if I click on it, I should be able to see the exact time of it. So 11:09. 11:22.
It tells you the energy level as well. That's 20,000 amps. Is that right? KA?
Yes. Wow. And it's cloud to ground. But yeah, I think it might be nice if you know, if you could actually see that visually, that it was cloud to ground. I think was we got some comments about that. And
you're talking about just making that a different color or something?
Yeah, we've actually just thrown it back at our graphic designer and just said, what do you reckon you can do here? So
amazing tool, incredible. So Behan apologizes for her blog being so out of date. We didn't even notice, but she's working on it straight away. And Phil and Norma, thank you very much for a great presentation. And so too does Judith. Has anybody else got any questions they want to come in with? Put your hand up if you want me to open your microphone, or put another question in the chat. We've had Nick to ourselves for well over an hour and a half because we started about 15 minutes early. So there's a question there coming from Patrick.
Yep.
She'll ask him to.
I can show you how to do that.
Let me just get him
Yep.
to, what is it, Patrick Michael? Allow to talk. Patrick, you should be able to open your microphone if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Nick wrote you a quite detailed question, but I've been adding nearby boats over a whole season, and after having taken a year break of cruising, I would like now to refine that list. Either I can delete the whole group list of GPS tracking, or remove them individually. But removing them individually, even with a fast internet connection, is extremely slow, as the web page is reloading every single track.
Okay.
You said that you had a faster way of doing this.
I don't know whether I do have a faster way of doing it. It's not something so you can't just delete them, come in here, and I suppose you could delete the group.
Yes, I could definitely delete the group. But when I do have that list appearing, like you have one showing up there, I might have 50 of them, and
Right.
that is slowing down that web page tremendously.
Yeah, so each time you delete one, it does. No, it doesn't seem that hard to. Is that not what it does for you, or is that you trying to do it a different way?
No, I am doing it that way, but I do have a pretty long list.
Okay.
And
I'd probably direct that to the support team. There possibly is
Okay.
just a back end way that they could bulk delete. Send them a list and say, look, I want to delete that, or yeah. I don't know of a better way. Sorry.
Thanks a lot.
Another question from Bihan, and from Hilary, and then from Marcia. So Bihan, do you want to go ahead? Bihan, do you want to go ahead and ask your question, or shall I read it out? I wonder if folks are interested in a historical wind data of seen the pilot chart. Yeah, we were talking about those with Jimmy Cornell the other night when he did his presentations, and the showing the historical winds. Do you want to show us that, Nick?
Yeah, for sure. So we did this recently, and we've actually so what we've done here is we have basically built pilot charts for the whole world. As you zoom in, you'll get more and more detail. They go down to 30 kilometer squares around the world, so it's 30-kilometer resolution. And what we've sort of done there with this is it uses the ECMWF data. So it's not the forecast data, just their they have a name for it, but it's like the initial conditions file. Basically, it's their sort of God, I wish I could remember the name. But anyway, basically, it's that data for each day. So we're actually looking at the data for every day. And then we put that into a monthly average, and then we're putting the past 10 years together. So every month, this data is actually dropping one off and adding a new month on, and re-averaging itself. So it's I guess it's a 10-year reflection, as opposed to some of the older charts, which possibly might be showing older data, and so that was sort of a way that we knew that the data was going to reflect more recent trends. So what so far as climate changes go, and it is just like a regular windrows, and so you can click on that, and we have daytime averages and nighttime and you can come in here and look at all of your things, and you can go through the different months for any location. Yeah, it was a huge amount of computing power to do it.
10 years worth of data on an hourly basis for the whole world is a lot of data.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of data. I think it took us a long time to do it, because initially we just had to work out how to process the data, and then the actual data processing did take a long time once we worked out how to do it. But it's a rolling 10-year average. It's probably the most, how do you say, up-to-date climate data that there is. Yeah, it's very cool. It's available, anywhere in the world, and pretty useful tool. And if you zoom in on any area, if I zoom in on where I live, I can look at a pretty detailed map of wherever I want to look.
That's great.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you very much. There are a few more questions that we can't quite let you go yet. Oh gosh, I've lost track. You can
You're not going to about too many. I think I've nearly drank a whole bottle of water. I'm going to.
Okay. Let's see. Hillary wants to thank the support team. A question from Marcy saying, will this be recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. It'll be posted up sometime tomorrow for your husband to watch. Kevin asks, where does the data come from? I think you answered that in your presentation. That's the observation data from the ECMFW. Somebody saying cool windroses. Certainly they are cool windroses. Didn't realize about the windroses. That's a fairly new feature for you guys, isn't it, Nick? You've not had that long.
Yeah, it is a couple of months.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you've reached the end, Nick. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
So
there is a question there from Bihan, and I can probably answer that. We are looking at doing some more stuff with the pilot charts. There was some there were some questions around sort of doing seasonal routes, and so I can't remember exactly where we've got to that, but we might look at that. We do have a feature where you can actually put a pilot sort of chart route in at the moment in local knowledge. And I think there was actually some talk of adding in all our tracking data to that, kind of like the heat maps that you see in AIS. Add for a specific month, could you see a heat map of where everyone went? I'm not sure exactly where we've got to with that. And I'd have to delve into whether we're going to do any of the other.
A question from the OCC. Boats that are sending their data to you via their PredictWind tracking, as we mentioned earlier, we collect direct from the boats their tracking data and put them onto our fleet map, and we drag in various AIS data. Is there any way the OCC could access that data to reflect onto our website? Some of it comes through existing AIS aggregators, etc., but it's a bit patchy, can be a bit sketchy in some places.
That's sort of the nature of AIS, that it is a bit patchy. Like often, Class B transponders don't get picked up by the satellites.
Yeah.
So that's just really the nature of the beast. We do have, we do have Spire satellite data within PredictWind, and that's where all that stuff's coming from. See, they've just been bought out by Kepler, who also own marine traffic, so that's going to be interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like someone's taking the whole lot over there. So yeah,
haven't heard that. Nick, look, we should let you go. You've been on air for an hour and 3/4 now, so fantastic. You've answered a lot of questions. Probably not quite the presentation you expected, but really interesting. And as we've directed other people to your more standard presentations, and I'll summarize the data. Send the web chat to you
Cool. Thank you.
Back to people. You're very welcome, but really helpful evening. Thank you very much, or very helpful morning for you in New Zealand.
And
we'll be there next year. We'll be there. We'll come knocking on your door next year to say hello.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have a cold beverage. Thanks so much for having us, and more than happy to talk to to everyone anytime. But as I say, if people do have questions, please reach out to our support team. They're great people. But thanks a lot for the opportunity, and thanks for the great feedback from everyone.
Great. I'll be in touch, Nick, but I'm winding off for now. No more questions. That's it. All done. Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, Nick.